My late teenage to early adult years have been predominantly consumed by two game series. One you're all more than familiar with in Payday. I've committed thousands of hours to Payday 2 across multiple accounts, platforms, and video mediums. In fact, I guess I've put just as many hours purely creating content for the game as I have playing it. But the other, which you might not be aware of, is Smite. I've played Smite 1 since closed beta, watching the game grow and develop, playing at a reasonably high level and managing to rack up an almost eye-watering 6,000 hours on Steam alone, with thousands more spent untracked through the original launcher. Why am I giving you a brief Kknowley video game history right now? Well, it's predominantly to address the possibility that I am cursed. Cursed to be passionate about games that have succeeded in reaching a fairly mainstream audience and have thusly devolved into being unloved cash cows for their development studios, and for which the spoils of their great successes are entirely misused. Spin-offs, publishing endeavours, misguided esports spend, both franchises have had them, and as a result, they've been bled dry to the point that when finally getting around to crafting a worthy sequel, they've had to do so under duress and from a position of extreme weakness that has undoubtedly impacted their critical and financial reception. This video is going to delve into the core issue of developing a game upon which the fate of a studio depends, how that can lead to crippling deadlines and forced design compromise, concluding with fair warning for how I anticipate this might impact the future update schedule and approach to monetization for the Payday series in particular. Let's start this video by retreading familiar ground though, before I start bringing in external case studies to further my points. Overkill, the named developer of Payday the Heist and 2, struck digital gold with the heisting franchise, especially after its monumental early success from 2013 to 15. For all intents and purposes, we should really consider Overkill and Starbreeze to be one and the same after the acquisition in 2012, so from here on out, I'll be using the modern title of Starbreeze when discussing the overarching studio. Anyway, Payday 2 was a huge success and quickly devolved into part cash cow, part vanity project as Bo Anderson worked his corporate magic to get every crossover under the sun into his game, and the paid DLCs just kept churning. At its core though, it was a truly excellent game that found its mainstream success on PC and Steam, but still had the allure and sticking power on console to release almost as many editions as Skyrim, despite the letdowns and palpable incompetence when it came to developing console updates. The real takeaway we need to keep in mind is the fact that the game was profitable, tremendously so. In fact, it could have been disgustingly profitable had they somehow got away with the CrimeFest 2015 lootbox gambling plan, but all of that wasn't really about improving Payday 2. Undoubtedly, the game grew, but not as a result of proportionate investment, as its role became clear as a bit of an infinite money glitch from which management could siphon off millions for ambitious, risky ventures. An easy way to view it is via the Boston growth share matrix. Payday 2 was the quintessential cash cow, with low market growth, limited competitors, and a massive chunk of the co-op heisting game market share. The common wisdom in this situation is to simply hold your ground, defend your position, and milk the cash cow for all it's worth to reinvest that in a high growth potential market, known as question marks or stars, depending on your starting market share. To be frank, Starbreeze played this by the book. Payday 2 saw just enough investment to keep being profitable throughout its lifespan, whilst other highly speculative ventures took centre stage. They gained the Walking Dead rights, shifted from using Diesel to the Valhalla game engine, which was massively risky, and poured millions of dollars into the emerging but highly unproven VR tech space, developing reportedly one of the best, but least commercially viable headsets in the form of Star VR. Hell, they even IPO'd, which is a whole other can of worms that can make it much harder to develop games creatively unburdened. But the core issue for me is in how gaming as a market is much more emotionally driven than other industries. You can't really play it by the book and expect to succeed. Very rarely will new stars emerge in the mold of Fortnite, and it's absolutely crucial from my perspective that you keep what you're known for active, alive, and present in the public eye. That said, it's no secret just how tremendously Starbreeze has struggled in the past to produce anything with even a fraction of Payday's staying power and industry relevance. Outside of a few successful publishing endeavours with the likes of Dead by Daylight, everything that required direct Starbreeze studio involvement and oversight was poorly conceived, mismanaged, and ran independently into the ground. Star VR, the Valhalla game engine, Overkill's The Walking Dead. all abject failures in the end. The Walking Dead game is probably the most egregious of the lot, as this one also tanked their good name and reputation, not only damaging the balance sheet but alienating fans, severing industry ties, and likely playing no small part in their insistence upon moving away from their iconic Overkill title. Attempting to diversify and reduce capital market risk is standard practice in most industries, but for Starbreeze, this process might as well have been akin to burning money for the little bit of heat it gave off, as each project was inherently laden with its own innate risk of failure. Even when they tried to play it safe with Raid World War II, basically Payday 2 set in Nazi Germany, they entered a low-growth market, meaning all they were doing was competing with their already established cash cow, which backfired tremendously. All of this to say, Starbreeze has at times been in a robust enough financial position to develop unafraid of the macro outcomes, predominantly thanks to the success of Payday 2. But by the time they got around to trying to mimic that success with a sequel, it felt that they were doing it more out of necessity and desperation than passion, and undoubtedly from a position of weakness. Lest we forget, Payday 2 was evergreen. After all the missteps leading up to 2019, they were forced to crawl back cap in hand and start milking Payday 2 once more, breaking a promise to release all future content for free as one final funding experiment to achieve a hard reset in the form of Payday 3. The expectation was that lightning would strike twice. I truly believe Payday 3 was viewed by higher-ups at the company as such a surefire, guaranteed success from name and reputation alone, they cut as many corners as possible to get to that seemingly inevitable win as quickly as they could. Now, that's hubris, but more problematically, in hindsight, it feels like marching Payday 3 out the door quickly was also a financial necessity caused by those years of frivolity. As I've already alluded to, I believe a game being produced from a position of weakness can be defined by the necessity to release said game regardless of internal sentiment, massive reliance on the individual success of that game to continue operations, and limited alternatives to doing so despite access to sufficient funding. Payday 3 needed to be made, not for the fans, but for the company, because the fans existed and would surely consume no matter what. However, I also believe a game being made from a weak position is one of the leading signifiers as to whether it will be unsuccessful in the modern era of double and AAA gaming. The desperation associated with this weakness leads to the most damaging, self-sabotaging practices a creative endeavour can be faced with, and Payday 3's development exhibits all the symptoms. A time-pressured release driven by financial necessity, resulting in underbaked, poorly tested systems, a bug-riddled launch, and insufficient content to hold a community's attention. Reliance upon a funding partner, losing autonomy over game direction and community messaging. A desire to cut costs and save on key infrastructure components, such as taking a risk on an unknown server provider. Peddling anti-consumer practices from the get-go, from pre-order incentives and confusing special editions filled with pre-sold but not yet produced content, or a planned microtransaction cash shop to further rinse the dedicated fanbase. Games built without the weight of these unnecessary pressures are given the space to succeed, but games like Payday 3 end up suffocating under the weight of desperation. But as of October 2024, the game has undoubtedly turned a corner. Operation Meditbag has been a resounding turnaround, coming about once leadership realised Payday 2's success was earned, not to be taken for granted, as they finally agreed to develop the game as if they were in a position of financial strength, prioritising quality over monetisable quantity. So why make this video now? Well, I do think it's fascinating to discuss, but also I'm immensely concerned history is already repeating itself at Starbreeze in relation to Project Baxter and its planned 2026 release. Not only is this Wizards of the Coast licensed D&D co-op FPS being developed from an even weaker position, with greater uncertainty and without the backing of a cash cow, but it's doing so with no clear thesis for why it should succeed after Payday 3's rocky launch hurt the illusion that this studio can still make brilliant co-op experiences in the vein of Payday 2. It really runs the risk of repeating what Overkill's The Walking Dead once managed, whilst potentially taking the entire studio down with it this time, which is tough to take as they're still the custodians of one of my most beloved franchises. Now, I believe the leadership at the studio want to escape the shackles of Payday. If you could ask them to vote on whether they'd rather be the thriving Payday-focused studio they were in 2014, or a multi-game monstrosity without a hook or identity, I'm positive they'd choose a diversified option. I have to mention Red Archer Live's interview with current Payday 3 game directors Almir and Andreas at this point. You should give the entire thing a watch, link below, but Almir's answer specifically on Baxter's impact on Payday 3 is telling.
I think players should focus on Payday and Payday 3, and they should instead look at, if Payday 3 isn't fun, then why should we continue work on it? If Payday 3 is fun, then we should work more on it. You know what I mean? It's more that. It's not so much that, oh, they're doing different games, that has to mean something negative for Payday. No, I mean, Payday has to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. And if it does that well, it can be anything. Right. But if we don't, if the trend would change and people would start liking the game less and less, then yeah, we're done with the game. Because why would we spend our time working on a game that the players don't want?
It's a total non-response. He's just saying we'll develop Payday 3 if it's fun, which if you read between the lines means we'll develop it if people are playing and spending money on it. The fact that he's unable to directly state that Baxter isn't impacting Payday 3 is alarming. They should be comfortable to state that one game isn't tangibly harming the other, but if we extrapolate from Almir's statement, for all those months Payday 3 was struggling in late winter and spring, and positive resources were being diverted towards Baxter, which at least has the potential to earn big on release. But as I've already said, it won't. It's set up for failure right now because it's developed from weakness. The company no longer has a cash cow bankrolling it, nor a reputation to fall back on, and could even have the stench of Payday 3's rotting corpse looming over it by the time 2026 rolls around. It's a worry. I don't see how Baxter can ever succeed without Payday 3 first proving its staying power. But the thing with a game made from weakness is that companies don't like throwing good money after bad, and so unless Payday 3 starts making money quickly, it's going to be Baxter or bust, and my money's on Baxter, then bust, if that's the case. In the meantime, Payday 3 is likely going to be manned by a skeleton crew, now there aren't any breaches of contract impending for undelivered content. So how does this all tie in with Hirez, or even the situation Ubisoft now faces after delaying Assassin's Creed Shadows from its position of weakness? Well, I believe Hirez is an almost uncanny dead ringer for Starbreeze, especially as of 2024, differing only in that Hirez is at least privately owned, meaning batting off investor pressure is less of a daily routine. Both studios have experienced resounding success with Smite and Payday 2 respectively. As of 2019, Smite had made over $300 million, which is a conservative estimate now 5 years on, surely comparable to the over 40 million copies Payday 2 has sold. Whilst the MOBA genre was hotly contested, Smite found a niche in the third-person market, and so also milked their free-to-play cash cow with god packs and skins. In the meantime, they invested Smite's earnings sporadically over the years, desperately chasing trends with games like Paladins, Realm Royale, and Rogue Company. Hell, they even attempted Smite spin-offs like DKO and the short-lived auto-battler Prophecy. Games like Tribes and Paladins were moderate successes, but never saw the same consistent investment to hit the heights Smite did, but over the years, the sheen wore off, as it did with Payday 2, and all the wasted ventures started to take a toll on the parent studio's balance sheet, meaning the only remaining option was to rekindle the magic of Smite with a Smite 2. Developed not to bring a new lease of life to the Smite formula with new ideas and a passion for a sequel that elevates the experience, but once again, from a position of weakness and desperation, existing as a shell of its predecessor that's trying desperately to offer even an equivalent experience. Sound familiar to anyone? These games weren't made with the intent to say or do something different and unique, they were made because they needed to be, and that's now become even more apparent at Hirez after a massive wave of layoffs, including veteran community figures, that indicates a restructuring towards a full focus on Smite 2's gameplay, as they now understand that monetization will have to wait until the groundwork is in place. It's a brutal move that's been all too common in the game industry as of late, which, as ever, is a result of mismanagement, both historically with failed ventures, and presently as resources have been misallocated. My great fear is that we're going to see something similar within Starbreeze if things don't turn around rapidly. However, as miserable as it is to admit, given the livelihoods disrupted as a result, I don't actually believe Hirez has made a mistake by reprioritizing the core gameplay of its most pivotal game. The key difference at Starbreeze is that Payday 3, Their linchpin game seems to no longer be the focus, which can surely only lead to more problems in the near future. So what's the fallout then? It isn't just to be miserable about things for the sake of being miserable. I think these similarities are fascinating, and I hope both studios turn things around as soon as possible, as they were once capable of making phenomenal games. But I also want to forewarn you about what I anticipate will happen to Payday 3 over the course of this year. By no means has it been improved only to be abandoned. I only think that happens if it proves to be a sizable financial burden to the company. If they at least come close to breaking even on it, it's worth keeping around for goodwill if nothing else until Baxter's launch. But with that in mind, in an attempt to make it financially viable, Starbreeze are going to need to find ways to monetize it further. That means I expect there to be much more paid content and DLC releasing this year. Expect them to find new things to sell you outside of the current formula. Cosmetics should be the priority, but based on rumblings we've been hearing lately, I also expect Legacy Heist to soon start costing, as well as character packs after Houston's strange addition to the store as free DLC. It's all subtly prepping us for a year of monetization, which is miserable to say, but the truth is, it's probably the only way the game sticks around. We should have a last foray of free content releasing shortly as OMB winds down, but after that, get your wallets ready if you want to keep up with the content. I'm just hoping the game is given the dev time it needs to make it all worthwhile. To be clear, I also hope Baxter is a resounding success, and they give the game the time it needs. But for that to truly be the case, Payday 3 needs to step up and fill that revenue gap that's currently exposing Baxter to all the scary trappings of a panic release. If they can get that right over year 2, I'm more than willing to eat my words regarding Baxter's likely fate. Never before have I wanted to be wrong more than I currently do. Thank you so much for watching. It's a bloody awful topic to delve into, but I still really enjoy this style of video from a writing standpoint, so let me know if you'd be interested in any future deep dives about Payday or the wider game industry. Take care, see you soon in the next video. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.